This is the third time Ish has gone to the southern part of the quarry, as he believes it still hides traces of pyrite. However, during the excavation, the geologist ends up being bitten by a rattlesnake and makes a cut in his hand to try to suck out the venom. While reaching for his cell phone to call for help, Ish drops it in a hole and runs through the forest in an attempt to reach his cabin in time to call the hospital. However, when he gets there, the man starts to feel sick and ends up fainting while his body tries to detoxify itself. In the following hours, Ish faces the greatest pain he has ever felt in his life and suffers a high fever. When he wakes up and looks at his hand, he sees the limb is completely swollen, but he still can't get up to ask for help. That night, Ish notices two men trying to break into his house, but when they realize that the inhabitant of the hut is ill, the guys decide to leave without coming to his aid. For a few days, Ish lies between life and elimination in bed, but when he finally manages to get up, he realizes that the wound on his hand has practically healed. After drinking a few sips of water, the geologist goes back to bed and sleeps a little longer until the next morning, when he realizes that he is completely cured. After washing up, he walks over to his car and notices that it is covered in dust, as if it had been sitting there for a long time. When he arrives in San Francisco, Ish realizes that the place is abandoned and tries to understand what happened, as he finds human bodies in the middle of the street. As he walks along the road, he comes across military vehicles and forgotten bodies inside cars. On a sign, he sees a message saying that, due to the global infection caused by a highly contagious pathogen, the US government has suspended shelters. After reading this message, Ish realizes what happened while he was out and drives to his parents' house. When he gets there, the geologist realizes that his relatives were taken by surprise by the pathogen a few days ago, as they were interrupted during a meal. When he enters the room, Ish finds his father's corpse on the bed and his mother's body lying in the bathroom. After crying for a few minutes, he digs a big hole in the garden to bury his parents and says goodbye to them. That night, Ish has the chance to sleep in his old room and, in the morning, he decides to go to the church, where he finds the bodies of dozens of believers who went there in the hope of being saved by God. Ish then goes to the supermarket to pick up some survival items and tries to leave the city, but finds that the bridge is closed. Furious, the man realizes that his only way out is by road and drives non-stop until he reaches Los Angeles, which is also empty. After taking a hot dip in the rooftop pool, Ish decides to go to the bar and is surprised by the sudden arrival of Milton and Anne. When he realizes that the geologist is somewhat oblivious to everything that has happened in the last 3 weeks, Milton shows him a video explaining the details of the infection that has taken the lives of millions of people. A few days ago, Milton and Anne met in that same hotel, and since then they've been drowning their sorrows in drink, trying to forget the people they've lost. The next morning, the 3 survivors eat a meal prepared by Milton, and Ish reveals that he plans to go out in search of other survivors. At this point, the geologist discovers that his companions have a very well-structured plan on how they intend to put an end to everything. It seems that the hotel's generator will continue to run for a few weeks and, until then, they will have an unlimited supply of food and drink. However, when the power is cut, all the perks will also cease to exist and the duo will be able to leave this world quickly by firing a gun. Upon hearing this, Ish wonders why they don't go out into the world to look for other ways to survive, but after everything they've been through, neither of them intends to live much longer, as they both see no point in being alive. When he realizes that they are both doomed to perish in that hotel, Ish decides to leave so as not to go mad with them and drives aimlessly for several kilometers. Frustrated, the man puts his foot down on the accelerator and only brakes when he sees a dog standing in the middle of the road. Ish decides to adopt the animal and names him Lucky. After putting the dog in the car, the geologist drives back to his city and decides to stop at a library, where he selects books on the most different subjects to study. Without knowing what the future will hold, Ish decides to spend his last days, months or years at his parents' house with Lucky and creates a new routine alongside his dog. For a year, the pair manage to hold it together and Ish does everything in his power not to go mad, despite having a few flashes of insanity. As a young man, the geologist used to consider solitude a great blessing, but now that he doesn't have the option of seeing other people, he realizes that loneliness is one of the worst condemnations. One day, looking at the horizon, Ish sees a trail of smoke coming out of a chimney and his hope, which had been dormant, is ignited again. That afternoon, he decides to go to the house and meets Emma. When she sees him, the woman gets scared and grabs her shotgun to defend herself. However, when she realizes that Ish is not a threat, she decides to welcome him into her home and tells him that she arrived in the city a few days ago. While having tea with her guest, Emma tells a little about her journey to San Francisco and invites Ish to spend the night in the house. The next morning, instead of leaving and continuing on his way alone, the man invites Emma to move in with him, so they can both help each other and keep each other company. After taking a look around her new home, Emma checks the quality of the soil in the garden to see if it is suitable for planting. At this point, Ish rushes to cut the rope he had hung from the ceiling, because now that he has found someone else, he can see the point in continuing to live. Looking through the pantry, Emma realizes that there is a rat infestation in the house and Ish accompanies her to the nearest supermarket to buy poison. When they arrive at the store, the couple split up with 2 trolleys to get everything they need, and Emma is a little startled to see the body of a mother and her child lying on the floor. Even after everything she has been through in recent months, the woman has never got used to all those bodies around and is willing to fight for their survival to the end. In a few days, Emma and Ish are already completely adapted to each other, as if they had always been together. Over time, they build a strong relationship of mutual trust and significantly improve their quality of life. Excited to build a new family with Emma, Ish goes after solar panels to ensure the house's electricity supply and ends up having an accident and breaking his foot. Luckily, he can count on Emma's help to treat the wound, and the woman reveals that she misses being around other people. When Ish gets better, Emma tells him she's pregnant, but the geologist doesn't take this information very well. His concern is that he won't be able to guarantee his wife's safety during childbirth or give his son a dignified life. However, Emma manages to reassure him, and, the very next day, Ish goes to the library to look for books on obstetrics, as his wife won't have the support of a hospital with trained professionals when it comes to giving birth. Over the next few months, Emma strives to maintain a balanced diet, but one day she feels a craving for meat, so her husband goes out hunting. Despite feeling bad about having to shoot a cow, Ish does what is necessary to feed his family and follows the instructions in a book to separate the pieces of meat. While doing the work, Ish begins to feel ill and needs time to recover before continuing. After removing all the parts he needs from the animal, the man returns home and finally finishes assembling the solar panels. With the disappearance of their natural predators, rats multiplied rapidly and came to dominate the streets of San Francisco. In the middle of the night, the couple notice the rodents approaching and rush to get rid of the garbage before they invade the house. While Emma shoots the invaders to stop them crossing the fence, Ish lights a fire to get rid of the garbage and burns the carcass of the cow he hunted days ago, because the smell of the animal is attracting the rodents. However, the plan doesn't go exactly to plan and the animals keep trying to get into the house. The pair quickly entered the house and began sealing all the doors and windows with tape to keep the infestation out. However, when all the exits are blocked, Ish realizes that Lucky is trapped outside and quickly opens the door to save his dog. At that moment, dozens of rats enter the house and the man spends the whole night trying to exterminate them. After eliminating the invaders, he helps Emma treat Lucky's wounds and the dog manages to survive. As the days went by, the rats were eliminated by the street cats, who did better surviving on their own than the dogs. When the time comes for her baby to be born, Emma receives all the support she needs from her husband and, even without any medical help, the couple manages to give birth without any complications. In the 6th year after the apocalypse, Ish is returning home after a long day of hunting and accidentally runs over an animal on the road. When he goes down to check if the creature is alive, he comes across a girl and runs after her to try to make some kind of contact. Frightened, the girl tries to keep him away, but soon realizes that Ish doesn't intend to hurt her. At this point, the man tells her that he is married and has 2 children. In addition, he and his wife live with another couple and he says that Evie can live with them if she has nowhere else to go. However, instead of joining the group, the young woman decides to go alone through the forest, but when Ish returns to the vehicle, she follows him and hides in the back of the truck. When he gets home, the man introduces his family to Evie, but the girl remains silent and Ish decides to give her time to get used to it. At dawn, Maureen brings breakfast to the girl, but Evie attacks her and doesn't allow the woman to go near her. However, with a little time and patience, she manages to win the young woman's trust and, while Evie is showering, Maureen decides to take a look at the items in her backpack. In doing so, the woman finds a notebook of sinister drawings and prepares a room to receive her new guest. Meanwhile, Ish and Jorge go hunting and find the hut where the girl used to live with her family. Despite having no idea what happened to Evie's family, the pair know that something very bad happened there. When they get home, they read the letter Maureen found in the girl's backpack and discover that Evie has stopped talking because of the trauma she suffered. At that moment, the family decides to adopt her to ensure that she has the chance to live a happy childhood. A few weeks later, Emma and Ish's 3rd child arrives and the couple are overjoyed. About a year later, while the children are playing in the garden, Ish hears someone approaching and takes out his gun. In the company of Emma and Jorge, Ish goes out to look for the invaders and finds Molly's family. The woman says she read the notice Ish and Emma wrote on the wall 7 years ago about the existence of other survivors and decided to go to them. After feeding them, Maureen and Jorge reveal that there is a house available in the neighborhood, should they be interested in staying in the city. The problem is that Ish doesn't agree with this idea and reveals to his wife that he has the feeling that these people can't be trusted. Even so, Emma manages to convince him to give the newcomers a vote of confidence and, the next day, Ish goes out with them to get food. During the search, Molly breaks into an abandoned hospital and confronts a street dog to get supplies. After scaring the animal away with a fire extinguisher, the doctor opens the medicine cabinet and grabs everything she can carry. As time went by, Ish realized that he could trust those three strangers and, once again, Emma's instinct proved to be right. With Jean's pregnancy, the family grew even larger and the woman received all the support she needed from her new friends to take care of the new baby. A while later, Maureen also gave birth to her first child and Jorge was thrilled to become a father. Before long, the three families had become a small community and came together to organize a party for Heather's 13th birthday. That day, a heavy storm hits and the girl realizes that Lucky isn't at home. Worried about his dog, Ish goes out in the rain to look for him and finds the dog's body under a tree that has been blown down by the wind. Hearing her husband's cries, Emma soon realizes what has happened and goes over to try to console him, because she knows how much Ish loves that dog. In the morning, the man buries Lucky in the garden of his house and, while he is working, he sees a cougar approaching to attack the children. He immediately jumps in front of the animal and starts fighting it. Seeing the man who rescued her from the forest being scratched and bitten by the cougar, Evie decides to speak up for the first time in many years and starts screaming for help. Thanks to the girl's pleas for help, the other adults manage to arrive in time and Molly has the help of her friends to treat his injuries. After her husband receives all the necessary medical attention, Emma goes out to hunt the feline and eliminates the cougar with 3 shots. After a few weeks of recovery, Ish is walking again and is gradually able to make a full recovery. A few years later, Heather and Rafe, Jean's eldest son, come of age and decide to take a trip around the country to see the world outside San Francisco. After saying goodbye to their parents, the youngsters set off on their journey with the promise that they will return before winter. A few weeks later, the family is affected by a drought and Ish goes to the reservoir to find out what's going on. However, on the way, he comes across a trailer full of survivors and drives quickly back home. As he is always on the alert, Ish finds it difficult to trust strangers, but Charlie follows him and tries to make friends with them. After introducing himself, the man asks if Ish and his family can have them for at least that night and Emma invites them to dinner. During the conversation, Charlie reveals that he has a drill and is willing to use it to dig a well on the property. Over the next 3 days, the man and his team work hard to find water and, in return, Charlie asks for Ish's help to stock up on fuel so that his tribe can continue their journey when the well is ready. However, on observing the behavior of his visitors, Ish begins to suspect that they are planning to take possession of the land and sets off a warning signal. However, when he tells Emma about his mistrust, the woman scolds him and says that Ish needs to learn to trust people a little more. In an attempt to clear his head and organize his thoughts, the man decides to take a walk in the forest alone and ends up getting lost. As night falls, Emma begins to worry, so she prepares to go out and look for him. However, just as she's about to leave, Ish shows up and gets a scolding from his wife. However, when she realizes that her husband needed some time alone to clear his head, Emma decides to forgive him for the scare he caused and begins to believe that he might be right about Charlie. The next morning, the men of the family continue their mission to dig the well and, after several days of work, they finally manage to find water. However, Ish's joy is destroyed when his suspicions are confirmed and Charlie reveals that he doesn't intend to leave. That night, after the celebrations, the man attacks Evie in the barn and, on hearing the girl's screams, Ish rushes to help her. Furious, he meets with his family and they all try to agree on what to do now that they know Charlie is a predator. When she is informed of what has happened, Emma doesn't think twice before coming to the conclusion that Charlie must be eliminated and she has the support of all her friends. With his hammer in hand, Ish goes to Charlie's trailer to ask him to leave the property, but the man refuses. Just then, Emma and her family show up wielding guns and Charlie mocks them. Seeing the man so sure of harming his family and believing that he will get away with it, Ish revolts and strikes him with his hammer. That night, Charlie is eliminated with numerous blows to the head and his body is dumped in the ocean. In the morning, Ish and Emma go to break the news to the members of Charlie's team and give them the option of staying or leaving with Silas. Everyone there knew the dubious character of their leader, so no one objected to what happened to Charlie and turned their backs on his best friend. After being expelled from the community, Silas leaves, but returns a few hours later begging to be accepted into the group. However, Ish refuses to accept him because he knows that Silas was Charlie's accomplice and intended to help him take possession of the land. 3 years pass and, just when everything seemed fine, Joey, Ish and Emma's youngest son, begins to show symptoms of the same disease that almost drove humanity to extinction. Before long, the pathogen spreads to other members of the community and Molly enlists the help of the most resistant to treat the weakest. Despite facing the pain of seeing his son ill, Ish is overjoyed when he learns that Heather has returned home safely. The problem is that, during the trip, Rafe ended up losing his life and, on hearing this, Ish begins to believe that he is being punished for taking Charlie's life. In an attempt to get medicine for his friends and family, the man crosses the San Francisco Bridge on his bicycle and breaks into an abandoned hospital. Before leaving, Ish enters the chapel and prays for forgiveness for the crime he committed. Despite what he has done, he doesn't believe that his children should pay for his mistakes, so he begs to be taken in Joey's place. When she learns that her firstborn will never return home, Jean asks what happened to him and Heather tells her that during the trip they found some arrows drawn in red. Along the way, the two youngsters realized that their search for people was taking them much further than they had planned, so they decided to return home. However, before making the return journey, the couple decided to camp on top of a hill to rest and were approached by a thief who wanted to take all their food. When he realized that the man was willing to hurt them, Rafe tried to defend himself, but ended up being hit in the stomach with a knife. Seeing her boyfriend injured, Heather became enraged and threw an axe at her enemy. After eliminating him, the young woman tried to stop the wound, but Rafe ended up losing a lot of blood and couldn't resist. The next morning, Corey asks about the appearance of the man who eliminated the young man and Heather describes the tattoos he had on his arm. At that moment, Corey realizes that it was Silas who attacked them, but decides to keep this information to himself. Meanwhile, Ish continues to do everything he can to save his son. Everyone in the camp who was infected is already recovering, except Joey, who is getting worse every day. One day, after being bedridden for a few weeks, the young man ends up not resisting and Ish loses himself in the pain of mourning. After erasing the note Emma wrote on the wall, he drives to the library and starts destroying everything he comes across, because that was Joey's favorite place. However, with time and the support of his wife, Ish manages to move on and regain hope for a promising future. One day, during a solitary walk in the forest, the geologist has the chance to contemplate a beautiful sunset and then realizes that what he had hoped for has happened. The earth has healed. A year after the loss of his son, Ish finds an old diary of Joey's in which the young man documents all his genius. Even though he didn't have the chance to go to university, he was able to design the prototype of a radio frequency transformer and various other devices that only existed in the modern world, which he never had access to. Reading some of the thoughts his son had recorded in that notebook, Ish discovered that the young man's dream was to meet other survivors and share his inventions with them. So, in an attempt to honor his son's memory, the geologist decides to use Joey's notes to build a radio device in order to find out if there are more people scattered around the planet. With the help of his friends, Ish manages to get the project off the ground and spends several hours a day trying to get in touch with another colony. Seeing her husband obsessed with the new project, Emma decides to take him out for some fun, so she organizes a baseball game with her friends. After their departure, Heather comments on the arrows she found during the trip, which she and Rafe followed for months. According to the young woman, the arrows were accompanied by a sequence of numbers and, on hearing this, Ish ran back to the radio. The man believes that by tuning in to the frequency of the numbers Heather has memorized, he will be able to contact other survivors. Excited about the possibility of finding more people alive, Emma and the other residents of the colony accompany Ish and are thrilled to hear Penelope's voice. The woman reveals that she lives in a community of 77 people in Point Lobo. It used to be a state park less than 160 kilometers from San Francisco. In the following weeks, Ish and his friends organized themselves to travel there and joined the people of that community to form a single colony that was even bigger and stronger. After 50 years since the start of the apocalypse that wiped out more than 90% of humans, the geologist passes his hammer on to Jack, Heather's eldest son, and feels lucky to have the chance to meet his grandchildren. So what did you think of this series? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more series recaps. See you next time.